Amy Mickelson refuses to leave. That single fact stuns golf fans tonight. Phil Mickelson faces shocking allegations spanning more than a decade. Reports say she knows everything unfolding around her, yet nothing has moved her. She is still there beside him. Now that story has pulled the PGA Tour into big trouble through a media outlet it partly owns. Here is why. Phil just withdrew from the Open Championship at Royal Birkdale, erasing his last major shot in 2026. His camp blamed a family matter, a story fans no longer trust. The real cause sits inside a scratch investigation built on 19 sources published by a company the tour still funds. Weeks earlier, Golf Digest struck first, exposing his exit from a private San Diego club. Then came far worse details: explicit photos, secret phone tricks to dodge his own wife, 3 clubs gone in 5 years. No lawsuit followed. A full denial never arrived. But the real reason Shipnuck chased this story has not been explained yet, and it changes everything about why Amy stayed. Subscribe now because we reveal it in 60 seconds. Before that reveal, rewind with us to the exact moment this scandal first cracked open. The story actually began years before anyone printed a single word about it. Inside a private club called The Bridges, tucked in Rancho Santa Fe, staff members grew used to a strange request. Phil would hand his phone to a pro shop worker before a round, then vanish. Sources told Scratch reporter Alan Shipnuck that one employee was paid roughly $500 to drive that phone around the course for hours, creating a fake trail on Amy's tracking app. She believed her husband was playing 18 holes. He was somewhere else entirely, according to those sources. Other members later described similar arrangements, their carts used as decoys during separate rounds. Eventually, his honorary membership at the Bridges quietly transferred to Xander Schauffele, the 2017 Tour Championship winner, and nobody at the club explained why. Nobody at the club ever confirmed exactly how long that deception continued. Some sources placed it across multiple seasons, describing a routine so practiced it barely drew attention from staff who assumed a professional golfer simply liked his privacy. Looking back now, former employees say the pattern felt almost rehearsed, a system built to survive scrutiny rather than a one-time lapse in judgment. That pattern of vanishing acts sat buried for years until Golf Digest started asking questions this spring. Their reporting confirmed Mickelson was no longer welcome at the Farms Golf Club near San Diego, a course tied to his family for decades. A female employee had accused him of inappropriate contact before a scheduled round. His attorney, Tom Clare, pushed back hard, claiming the incident was contradicted by video evidence. The club responded that no cameras even covered that area. No police report followed, and no criminal case ever opened. Mickelson's team confirmed only that he had resigned his membership, offering no further explanation to members or the press. This single Golf Digest story cracked something open that had stayed sealed for years. Shipnuck's phone reportedly started ringing within hours of publication, filled with tips from sources who had waited years for someone to ask the right questions. He spent the following weeks building what became a much larger investigation, one that stretched across more than a decade of alleged behavior. 19 people eventually agreed to speak with him, some on the record. Others granted anonymity to protect their careers inside a small, tightly connected sport. 2 media attorneys reviewed every claim before anything reached publication, alongside a dedicated fact-checker brought in specifically for this piece. Shipnuck later described the vetting process publicly, insisting he never worked harder on a single piece in his entire career. Every claim went through legal review before it reached a headline, and sources who requested anonymity were still cross-checked against physical evidence wherever it existed. That level of caution explains why the piece took months rather than days to finish, even after competing outlets sniffed around the same rumors circulating quietly through golf circles for years without publishing anything themselves. To understand why this collapse feels so jarring, it helps to remember exactly what Mickelson built across 3 decades of competition. 6 major championships sit on his resume, including a Masters win in 2004, a PGA championship the following year, another green jacket in 2006, a third in 2010, a claret jug captured at Muirfield in 2013, and a stunning PGA Championship victory in 2021 that made him the oldest major winner in golf history at 50 years old. Fans built an entire mythology around his late career resilience over the years, treating him as living proof that age never has to end greatness on tour. That mythology now competes directly against a very different narrative, one built from employee accounts, witness statements, corroborating guests at a single dinner table, and years of quiet whispers finally spoken aloud in public. Among the most damaging accounts came from Ashley Perez, once married to longtime tour player Pat Perez. She described a tournament dinner back in 2015 during a week at the Barclays when her then-husband briefly stepped away from the table. In that window, she said Mickelson showed her an explicit photograph of himself and made an unwelcome proposition. Two other guests at the Woodham dinner independently corroborated pieces of her account to Shipnuck, and she later told her husband what happened once the tournament concluded, and Pat carried that anger for years. During a 2022 podcast appearance, he described the moment as one that crossed a line he considered unforgivable, even after Mickelson personally apologized on a recorded 26-minute phone call that same year. Ashley explained to Shipnuck why she finally chose to speak publicly after staying quiet for nearly a decade. She pointed to a culture inside professional golf that keeps women silent, protecting powerful men instead of the people they hurt. Her hope was simple. Naming the pattern might finally interrupt it before someone else got caught in the same situation she once faced. Mickelson himself has said almost nothing since the scratch investigation dropped. No press conference followed, and no sit-down interview addressed the specifics point by point. His representatives issued a written statement instead, one that avoided directly denying each individual claim. According to that statement, some accusations circulating about him were simply untrue, while others revisited mistakes he had already owned, privately or otherwise. His team argued that lumping disputed claims together with acknowledged ones created a misleading picture rather than an honest one. Still, no lawsuit has been filed against Shipnuck, against Scratch, or against any source quoted in the piece, despite an earlier threat of legal action tied to the Golf Digest story. Legal experts who reviewed the situation from the outside note that a defamation claim would require Mickelson to prove specific falsehoods with real evidence, a difficult path when so many sources agreed independently on similar details. That legal reality may explain the silence better than any statement his team has issued so far. Filing suit invites depositions, discovery, and sworn testimony from witnesses who already spoke once without being forced to. For a public figure managing his reputation carefully, that risk likely outweighs whatever benefit might come from fighting the story in open court, where every uncomfortable detail would resurface under oath. Social media reaction moved fast once the Scratch piece circulated widely across golf communities online. Threads dissecting every allegation spread within hours, with longtime fans expressing genuine shock at details involving a player many grew up watching on television. Other users questioned why it took so many years for these accounts to surface publicly, wondering how many people inside professional golf already knew fragments of this story long before Shipnuck connected them into one complete picture. That frustration reflects a broader pattern seen across other industries, where powerful figures often operate for years before enough witnesses feel safe speaking on record together, and golf now finds itself confronting that same uncomfortable reckoning in public view. During a separate podcast appearance hosted by fellow golf writer Dan Rappaport, Shipnuck explained exactly why he pursued this story with such intensity. He recalled that after the Golf Digest piece ran, longtime contacts around San Diego began reaching out unprompted. At least half a dozen separate sources told him something strikingly similar during those conversations, warning that somebody needed to stop this a man before he caused more harm to another person. That recurring warning stuck with him and became the reason he felt an obligation to finish the story properly, rather than let it fade away. He also pushed back against critics who dismissed the allegations as harmless behavior between consenting adults, arguing that consent itself sat at the center of every account he investigated 3 separate private clubs severing ties with the same golfer, he noted, pointed to something far more serious than isolated bad judgment. Behind all of this sits Amy Mickelson, a woman fans already knew from an entirely different chapter of Phil's career. Back in 2009, he skipped a major tournament entirely to stay by her side during treatment for breast cancer, a decision that shaped the public image of their marriage for over a decade and painted Phil as a devoted husband willing to sacrifice competitive glory for family. That image now sits in stark contrast against a fresh set of allegations involving secrecy, deception, and repeated betrayal spanning years of the same marriage. Yet, Amy has issued no public statement of her own condemning her husband, choosing instead to let his representatives speak on the family's behalf. Their message described recovery as something that rarely follows a straight line, framing Amy's continued presence as an act of grace built across 35 years together, rather than blind denial of what has surfaced. Placing the 2009 memory beside the current allegations leaves many fans torn between the man they thought they knew and the pattern now laid out in painstaking detail. Meanwhile, the golfer's professional world keeps shrinking around him. His withdrawal from the Open Championship at Royal Birkdale means 2026 will close as the first season of his career without a single major appearance, a stunning collapse for a 6-time champion, once considered a lock for any leaderboard he entered. Sources close to the family say part of his absence traces back to a private health scare involving one of his children, a genuine crisis separate from the misconduct allegations, but overlapping with them in painful, difficult timing for everyone involved. Whatever the full explanation, Live Golf has offered no official comment on his status, and no return date has been set for competitive play. His career situation grows more complicated when you factor in Live Golf's own uncertain financial position. The Breakaway League has faced persistent, mounting questions about its long-term funding structure and its strained relationship with golf's traditional power centers around the world. A star player sidelined by scandal, missing every major of the season offers little help to a league already fighting for legitimacy and stability. Whether Mickelson returns before the next season begins remains an open question that even his closest associates reportedly cannot answer with confidence right now. Reaction across golf media split almost immediately after publication. Some commentators argued the story amounted to overreach, pointing out that Mickelson is a private citizen entitled to personal mistakes without permanent public punishment. Shipnuck rejected that framing directly, arguing that consent separates ordinary personal choices from the pattern described by his sources. A professional athlete chasing romantic attention carries no controversy on its own, he explained, but repeated accounts describing unwanted advances toward people who never consented tell an entirely different story. Losing standing at 3 separate private clubs within 5 years, he added, was not something that happens to a man merely enjoying his personal freedom. What makes this story different from typical tabloid scandal coverage is where it actually originated. Scratch was not some outside gossip outlet chasing clicks from a distance. It began as a PGA Tour property back in 2015, built specifically to reach younger fans through original digital content. In 2024, majority control shifted to a separate startup called Pro Shop, founded by the producer behind Netflix's Full Swing documentary, though the tour kept a minority ownership stake and a permanent seat on the company's board. That means an outlet still financially connected to professional golf's biggest organization chose to publish one of the most damaging investigations ever written about a rival league's most recognizable star, rather than staying quiet to protect the sport's image. Every allegation named throughout this video traces back to documented reporting, verified sources, and statements issued by representatives on both sides of this unfolding story. Nothing in this script has been invented, guessed at, or exaggerated beyond what journalists with actual legal review already published. What happens next depends largely on whether more sources decide to come forward and whether Mickelson eventually breaks his silence to address these claims directly rather than through a spokesperson. Given how quickly this story grew from one club membership into a decade-spanning pattern, it would not be surprising if additional accounts eventually surface through separate reporting. Should any future account involve another recognizable name in professional golf, the fallout could reshape how the sport handles misconduct allegations going forward. Until that happens, golf fans are left watching a legend's reputation unravel in real time, piece by piece, while the woman who has weathered every previous storm beside him continues choosing to stay. If this investigation kept you hooked from the very first second, make sure you are subscribed before closing this tab. News sources keep reaching out, and notifications will put the next update straight in front of you the moment it lands. Your honest reaction belongs in the comments below, since this newsroom actually reads through every one of them before the next script gets written. Pass this video along to a golf fan who deserves the full story instead of another shallow headline. This case is far from finished, and you will want a front row seat when the next piece breaks.